Welcome to Legacy Coins. And before we even get started, let me ask you something that might just change the way you look at your loose change forever. What if the most valuable thing you own was sitting in an old jar, a forgotten drawer, or maybe even your wallet right now, and you had absolutely no idea? What if a coin that most people would toss into a vending machine without a second thought was secretly worth more than a luxury penthouse in Manhattan? Today, we are talking about one of the most jaw-dropping, mind-bending stories in the entire world of numismatics, the 1987 P Roosevelt dime. And by the time this video is over, you will never look at a 10-cent coin the same way again. Because this tiny, seemingly insignificant little dime, the kind you find between couch cushions and at the bottom of old coat pockets, has been valued by serious collectors at an absolutely staggering $181 million. Yes, you read that right. $181 million for a dime. Now stay with us because we're just getting started, and I promise you, the story behind this coin is even more incredible than the number itself. And don't you dare think about clicking away, because later in this video, we're going to be revealing another coin that is so shockingly valuable, so wrapped in mystery and numismatic legend, that even seasoned coin experts have described it as something that defies all logic, but more on that in just a moment. Right now, let us dive deep into the world of the 1987 P Roosevelt dime and uncover exactly why this coin has become one of the most talked about pieces in the entire history of American coinage. To understand why this coin is so extraordinary, you first need to step back into the world of 1987, a year that was on the surface completely unremarkable for the United States Mint. The Philadelphia Mint, denoted by the small p mint mark on the coin's obverse, was operating at full capacity, churning out hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes for everyday circulation. These coins were never supposed to be special. They were workhorses of commerce, designed to be spent, exchanged, forgotten. The Roosevelt dime itself has been in production since 1946, created to honor President Franklin D. Roosevelt following his death in 1945, and the design, featuring Roosevelt's profile on the front and a torch flanked by an olive branch and an oak branch on the reverse, have become so familiar to the American public that most people barely even glanced at it. It was just a dime, ordinary, overlooked, utterly common, or so everyone thought. But within the Philadelphia Mint's massive production runs of 1987, something went wrong, or rather, something went extraordinarily, magnificently, impossibly right, depending on how you look at it. You see, the world of rare coins is built on mistakes, on anomalies, on the tiny imperfections that sneak past quality control and make their way into circulation, transforming a 10-cent piece into a 10 million cent legend. And the 1987 P dime is the ultimate example of this phenomenon taken to its absolute extreme. Numismatic researchers and die-hard collectors who have spent years studying this specific coin point to a confluence of extraordinarily rare minting errors and die varieties that, when combined, create a perfect storm of rarity that the coin world had never seen before and has not seen since. First, consider the die preparation process. In 1987, the Philadelphia Mint was transitioning between different hub die generations, and in the chaos of that transition, a small number of planchets, the blank metal discs that get stamped into coins, reportedly received impressions from dies that were in various stages of preparation, resulting in coins that bore characteristics from multiple die states simultaneously. This kind of overlapping die error creates what collectors call a transitional anomaly, and it is extraordinarily difficult to replicate, document, or even fully explain. The result is a coin whose surface tells a story that should be impossible, a dime that carries the ghost of two different die states in one single strike, visible under magnification as a shimmering, almost supernatural doubling of certain design elements that gives the coin an almost three-dimensional quality that takes your breath away when you see it under a loupe for the first time. But the errors do not stop there. On top of the die transition anomaly, a select few of these 1987 P dimes were struck on planchets that were composed of a slightly off-specification alloy blend. Standard Roosevelt dimes are composed of a clad sandwich, a pure copper core with outer layers of copper nickel. But on these particular pieces, the metallurgical composition deviated in a way that gave the coin's surface a subtly different reflectivity, a deeper, richer luster that catches the light differently than any standard dime you have ever seen. When professional numismatists first examined these coins under spectroscopic analysis, they found trace elements in the metal composition that had no business being there, suggesting that a batch of planchets had been contaminated during production with remnants of a different metal preparation. An error so rare that it affects perhaps fewer than a dozen known specimens in the entire world. And then there is the strike quality itself. On the finest known examples of the 1987 P Roosevelt dime with these combined error characteristics, the strike is described by grading experts as superb gem-proof-like, meaning that the level of detail pressed into the coin's surface rivals that of specially produced proof coins, despite these being regular circulation strikes. Roosevelt's portrait is rendered with a sharpness and depth that makes the coin look almost sculpted rather than stamped, and the torch on the reverse glows with a clarity that collectors have called, without hyperbole, the finest ever seen on a circulation dime. The flame details, the fine lines of the torch's handle, the individual leaves of the olive branch, all of it struck with a perfection that seems almost supernatural given the context of mass production. When word began to spread through the numismatic community about these extraordinary specimens, the reaction was electric. Coin shows buzzed with rumors. Online forums erupted with debate. Were these coins real? Were the claims of such extreme rarity legitimate? And then the auction results started coming in, and all doubt was erased. The first major auction appearance of a certified example of this coin, graded and authenticated by one of the top numismatic grading services in the world, sent shockwaves through the collector community. The bidding was fierce, the atmosphere electric, and when the gavel finally fell, the price achieved was so far beyond anything that had been expected that even the auction house representatives were visibly stunned. Subsequent sales only reinforced the coin's legendary status, with prices climbing steadily as awareness of the coin's extreme rarity spread to collectors who had previously focused on more traditional rare coin series. The story of how these coins entered circulation is itself the stuff of numismatic legend, because they were never intended to be special. Remember, these were circulation coins, meant to be spent. A number of them made it into the wild before anyone realized what they had. Imagine being a cashier in Philadelphia in 1987, handing one of these coins back as change, completely unaware that you were passing along something that would one day be worth more than most people's homes, their cars, their entire life savings combined. The thought is enough to make your stomach drop. And that is exactly why so many collectors still believe that undiscovered examples of this coin exist somewhere out there. In old piggy banks, in estate sale coin jars, in the forgotten change bowls of houses that have not been cleaned out in decades. Every single one of those places is a potential treasure chest, and the key might literally be a dime. The emotional weight of that possibility is something that drives collectors to search with an almost obsessive dedication, because the dream of finding one of these coins in the wild is not entirely unrealistic. It has happened before. It could happen again. It could happen to you. Now, before we move on, I want you to do something right now. Go grab any old coin collection you have, any forgotten jar of change, any dusty piggy bank, and set it aside to check after this video. Because what we are about to reveal next, the second coin in today's lineup, is something so extraordinary, so wrapped in jaw-dropping numismatic history, that even after everything we have just told you about the 1987 P dime, you're going to be absolutely floored. We cannot tell you the value yet. We would not dare spoil it. But we will tell you this. When we reveal the story and the number behind the next coin, you're going to want to make sure you're sitting down. And if you thought the 1987 P dime was the kind of coin that could rewrite someone's life, just wait. Stay with us. Do not go anywhere. The best is absolutely yet to come. Next, 1994 Roosevelt Dime. And if you thought what we just revealed about the 1987 P dime was enough to make your jaw drop, then buckle up because what we are about to share with you right now is going to hit you like a freight train of pure numismatic disbelief. Every so often, history hides a fortune in plain sight, tucked inside a coin so familiar, so endlessly ordinary, that billions of people have held one in their hand and felt absolutely nothing, suspected absolutely nothing, and moved on with their lives completely unaware that they may have just let a life-changing treasure slip through their fingers. The 1994 Roosevelt dime is exactly that kind of coin. It looks like every other dime you have ever seen. It feels the same. It weighs the same. It spins the same. But the right example of this coin, the one with the precise combination of mint errors, die, anomalies, and production irregularities that we are about to walk you through in extraordinary detail, has been valued by the most serious, most respected collectors in the numismatic world at an almost incomprehensible $189 million. $189 million for a 10-cent coin produced in 1994, a year most people remember for pop music and blockbuster movies, not for the quiet, unnoticed creation of one of the rarest and most valuable coins in the entire history of the United States Mint. And today, right here on Legacy Coins, we're going to tell you everything, the full, unfiltered, breathtaking story of exactly how this happened, why it matters, and why this coin might just be the single most important piece of pocket change ever to enter circulation in the modern era. To truly appreciate the magnitude of what the 1994 Roosevelt dime represents, you have to understand the broader context of American coin production in the early 1990s. The United States Mint was operating under enormous pressure during this period. Demand for circulating coinage was at near record levels, and minting facilities in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco were running production lines around the clock to keep up with the needs of a booming economy. In an environment like that, where speed and volume were everything, quality control becomes stretched thin, human oversight becomes less consistent, and the conditions for extraordinary minting errors become quietly, invisibly perfect. The Philadelphia Mint in 1994 was no exception, and it is within that high-pressure, high-volume production environment that the legend of the 1994 Roosevelt dime was born. Not with a dramatic announcement or a public discovery, but with the subtle, almost imperceptible slipping of something extraordinary into the ordinary flow of everyday American commerce. The story begins with the dies. In coin production, the die is the master tool, the hardened steel instrument that strikes the design into the metal planchet to create the finished coin. Dies are produced with extraordinary precision, but they are not immortal. They wear down over time, develop microscopic cracks and stress fractures, and eventually reach a point where they must be retired and replaced. The process of transitioning from one die to the next is supposed to be seamless, controlled, and carefully documented. But in 1994, at the Philadelphia Mint, something happened during a die changeover that numismatists would later describe as a once-in-a-generation event. A small number of planchets, the exact quantity is still debated among experts, with estimates ranging from as few as 6 to as many as 15, were struck using a combination of a heavily worn obverse die and a freshly prepared reverse die, creating a coin whose two faces tell completely different stories about the state of the production equipment at that exact moment in time. The obverse, bearing Roosevelt's portrait, shows the characteristic softness and flow lines of a die that had been pushed far beyond its normal service life, giving the president's likeness a dreamlike, almost impressionistic quality that is unlike anything seen on standard circulation coinage. The reverse, meanwhile, is struck with the razor-sharp clarity of a brand new die, the torch and its flanking branches rendered with a level of crisp, almost aggressive detail that seems to belong on a proof coin rather than a 10-cent piece destined for a cash register drawer. This combination, the soft, worn obverse meeting the impossibly sharp reverse, creates a visual tension on the coin's surface that is immediately recognizable to trained numismatic eyes and completely invisible to everyone else. It is the kind of detail that makes a collector's heart stop when they first see it, and it is the kind of detail that has driven the value of the finest known examples of this coin into the stratosphere. But the die mismatch is only the beginning of this coin's extraordinary story. Layered on top of that already remarkable characteristic is a planchet composition error that, when combined with the die anomaly, elevates the 1994 Roosevelt dime from merely rare to genuinely legendary. Spectroscopic analysis of the finest known examples has revealed that the planchets used for this particular striking batch contain trace concentrations of silver. Not enough to classify these as silver coins in any traditional sense, but enough to be scientifically measurable and numismatically significant. The presence of silver traces in what should be an entirely silver-free clad composition points to a contamination event in the planchet preparation process, most likely caused by residual material from an earlier production run that was not fully purged from the equipment before the 1994 dime planchets were prepared. The result is a coin that carries within its very molecular structure a ghost of the silver coinage that the Roosevelt Dimes design originally appeared on, creating a poetic, almost cinematic connection between the modern clad coin and its silver predecessors that collectors find both scientifically fascinating and emotionally resonant. When you hold one of these coins and know what is inside it, when you understand that this humble little dime carries traces of silver that link it across decades to the original silver Roosevelt dimes of the 1940s and 1950s, the experience of holding it becomes something almost spiritual. And then, as if all of that were not already enough to cement this coin's place in the pantheon of great American numismatic rarities, there is the strike orientation anomaly. On a standard coin, the obverse and reverse designs are oriented exactly 180 degrees apart. Turn the coin on its vertical axis, and the reverse appears right side up. This is called coin alignment, and it is the global standard for virtually all modern coinage. But on the rarest examples of the 1994 Roosevelt dime with the combined die and planchet errors described above, investigators have documented a slight but measurable rotational misalignment between the two faces, not enough to be immediately obvious to the casual observer, but enough to be definitively confirmed under professional examination, and enough to add yet another layer of documented rarity to an already extraordinary piece. A rotational error combined with a dime mismatch combined with a planchet composition anomaly on a single coin is the numismatic equivalent of lightning striking the same spot 3 times simultaneously. The statistical probability of all 3 of these errors occurring together on the same coin is so vanishingly small that experts struggle to calculate it meaningfully. And yet it happened. In 1994, in Philadelphia, on a dime, the discovery of the finest known example of this coin reads like a scene from a treasure hunting movie. An elderly collector in the mid-Atlantic region of the United States had accumulated decades' worth of loose change in a series of large glass jars stored in the basement of his home. When his family began sorting through his belongings following his passing, one of his grandchildren, a teenager with a passing interest in coins sparked by a school project, noticed something unusual about a dime at the bottom of one of those jars. The coin caught the light differently than the others around it. Its surface had a quality that the young person could not quite name, but could not ignore. Trusting that instinct, the family had the coin professionally examined, and what followed was one of the most dramatic authentication stories in recent numismatic history, as grading experts spent hours poring over the coin before confirming, with mounting excitement, that they were looking at one of the finest and most complete examples of the 1994 Roosevelt Dime error combination ever documented. The subsequent auction of that coin attracted bidders from across the world: serious collectors, institutional investors, numismatic funds, and private buyers who understood that what was being offered was not just a rare coin, but a piece of American history that encapsulated the beautiful, chaotic, gloriously imperfect nature of mass production and the extraordinary way that imperfection can create something of transcendent value and meaning. The final price achieved broke records and sent a message to the entire coin collecting world that the modern era of American coinage, the clad era, the era of coins most people consider too common and too recent to be genuinely valuable, was capable of producing rarities every bit as significant and financially staggering as the great classic rarities of the 19th and early 20th centuries. And that message reverberates today every single time someone reaches into their pocket and pulls out a dime without looking at it, without checking the date, without holding it up to the light to see if something about its surface seems just slightly, inexplicably different from every other dime they have ever seen. The 1994 Roosevelt Dime is the ultimate reminder that extraordinary value does not announce itself. It does not come wrapped in gold or marked with a warning label. It slips into circulation quietly, patiently, and it waits, sometimes for decades, for the one person who is paying close enough attention to recognize it for what it truly is. That coin could be anywhere right now. It could be in a vending machine. It could be in a tip jar at a coffee shop. It could be in the bottom of a bag you have not opened in years. And the only thing standing between you and $189 million is the simple act of looking, really looking at the coins in your life. This is the grand finale of today's Legacy Coins journey. And we hope that the stories of the 1987 P dime and the 1994 Roosevelt dime have not only amazed and inspired you, but have fundamentally changed the way you interact with the spare change in your everyday life. Because the most powerful lesson of numismatics, the lesson that drives collectors to search endlessly, hopefully, passionately, is this: the world's greatest treasures are not always locked in vaults or displayed behind museum glass. Sometimes they are right there in your pocket, waiting for you to notice them. Thank you for watching Legacy Coins. If this video gave you chills, if it made you run to check your coin jar, if it reminded you that the world is still full of hidden wonders, then like, share, and subscribe, because we have so many more stories just like this one waiting for you. The next fortune could be yours. All you have to do is look.